June 28th, 2013, from Ribbit Media's Full Duplex Studios in Providence, Rhode Island, this is NewsUndies. For June 28th, 2013, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. Actually, before we get too carried away, can I get away with a couple of James Gandolfini thoughts? He died so late last week, I really didn't have a lot of time to, look into it. If James Gandolfini played Gandalf, the Lord of the Rings could have been resolved in 15 minutes, as he would have had Sauron's kneecaps drilled out. If James Gandolfini had organized Live Aid instead of Bob Geldof, Africa would now be a thriving continent with a booming concrete and sanitation sector. If James Gandolfini had played Laverne DeFazio's roommate Shirley Feeney, things would certainly have been different in Milwaukee. Somehow. I'm not sure how, but somehow. I mean, James Gandolfini in drag? Okay, on with the headlines. Bill the Rock Cunningham? On Sean Hannity's Fox News program, conservative talk radio host Bill Cunningham tells commentator Tamara Holder to shut your mouth and know your role. Shocked, Holder asked, "As a woman?" And he said, Yeah, that's classy and grown up. A study published recently in Social, Psychological, and Personality Science suggests conservatives and religious folks love rules but don't understand consequences. Really? That's a cutting-edge idea that really seems counterintuitive. Really. Former South African President Nelson Mandela's condition changes to pretty typical for a 94-year-old. Paula Deen shocker turns out not to be such a surprise. NSA whistleblower Snowden heads to Russia, may end up in Ecuador. Is that where the commitment to freedom is now? George Zimmerman trial begins. Finally, the drought of 24-hour news is over. Rape kits fix everything. Or not. Texas State Representative Jody Laubenberg claims that a rape kit used to collect evidence following an alleged sexual assault is functionally equivalent to a D&C procedure typically performed after a miscarriage. PolitiFact.com calls pants on fire. Richard Dawkins gives a brief talk on memes, which devolves into a techno-dubstep hallucination. Gawker focuses on Dawkins being an insufferable atheist. Food Network shows Paula Deen her new office, a wood chipper. Nick Wallenda's death-defying walk with Jesus. American Atheists erects a monument on the courthouse lawn in Stark, Florida, in response to a giant Ten Commandments monument erected on the same lawn. Personally, I think American Atheists didn't get their money's worth because there's not one thing on the monument that comes right out and says, "Don't believe in a God." When the Christian wackos put up their Ten Commandments monuments, they get a free "Believe in Our God or Burn Forever." No charge. Family Ties creator dead? Great! Now what do we do? George Lucas marries again. Most offensive is that CNN refers to him as a Hollywood writer, director, and producer. To be clear, Lucas abandoned the so-called Hollywood system after the box office failure of his film THX 1138 in 1971. Michael Jackson persists in being dead despite cessation of resuscitation efforts 4 years ago. Fox News hosts suggest making something up. Fox News, always ready to try something new. Creationist loon Eric Hovind climbs on the new atheist monument in Stark, Florida, and raves about creation and hell. The only thing new about this is the atheist monument in Stark, Florida. Paula Deen blubbers tearfully to Matt Lauer. So now we have that on video. DOMA struck down by SCOTUS. This happened days after the SCOTUS gutted the Voting Rights Act. A satanic day in the neighborhood? Fox News slams Fred Mr. Rogers for destroying a generation of children by telling them they're special just for being them. Yeah, that's evil. Life is full of risk and can be expensive. Fortunately, there's insurance to help defray those costs. Unfortunately, insurance is confusing. Fortunately, we have Paul Torville here to clear the air in a segment we call Your Money. Insurance is a kind of gambling, and just like any other kind of gambling, when you're playing against the house has figured out the odds, and overall, the house wins the overwhelming majority of the time. When, for example, you buy life insurance, the insurance company is betting that you won't die before they've made a profit on your premiums versus the promised benefit. From a cost-benefit standpoint, the best thing that can happen to you is that you get a maximum benefit payout as soon as you've paid sufficient premiums for the underwriter to pay out the maximum benefit under the plan. Of course, in the case of life insurance, this means you're dead. The benefit doesn't really do you any good. The bottom line is this: more often than not, the insurance company will be going home with a lot more of your money than your beneficiaries will. I'm Paul Torville, and this was Your Money. Good to know. Stick around. Coming up next, criminals don't obey the law, there isn't enough sugar, and your headstone is obsolete.
Your childhood. George Lucas. In 1977, George Lucas made your childhood. In 1997, George Lucas took your childhood away. In 1999, George Lucas made you watch as he bent your childhood over a stump. Now, George Lucas wants you to watch him violating your childhood in 3D. Finally, someone is here to stop George Lucas from defiling your childhood memories anymore. But we need your help. The original trilogy Restoration Alliance has been established to raise all the money necessary to distract George Lucas from thinking Star Wars needs to be revised again. Please, give generously. This is our most desperate hour. Help us save your memories. You're our only hope.
Supermoon. Virginia gubernatorial candidate and current Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli courts the vote of people who have almost any kind of sex at all by asking the Supreme Court to revive ban on oral and anal sex. On what grounds? He claims it's an important tool in prosecuting child molesters. Of course, the laws prohibiting sex with minor children have no impact on that. There are laws prohibiting adults from having sex with minor children, right? After all, this is Virginia. Yeah. You know what is an important tool? Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli. Paula Deen has been lambasted in the press recently for admitting in a deposition related to a lawsuit in which Deen and her brother are defendants that she had used the N-word and other racially charged language over many years, but in a non-mean way. Whatever that means. Deen has since lost her relationship with Food Network and a number of endorsement deals. Is this a free speech issue or a matter of her responsibility as a representative of various corporate interests? Here are Pig and Sheep with their thoughts.
Paula Deen is a saint. Her rich, fatty recipes provide the sugar, fat, and salt that our bodies crave due to their historical rarity early in the evolution of our species. Not that I believe in evolution. But Paula Deen may have said some insensitive things, but that doesn't mean she can't still promote obesity and endorse diabetes management products. She still deserves an opportunity to have her faults overlooked and eventually forgotten so she can make no changes to her behavior and attitudes and really self-destruct in a laughably tragic I told you so flame out. Ultimately, the companies which sponsor Paula Deen have a responsibility to their shareholders to keep the companies viable and functioning. Associations with people who have demonstrated an ability to offend large swathes of the population, particularly on ethnic or racial bases, threaten the viability of the company. Sure, Paula Deen has a right to free speech, and if she can contain her racist epithets such that only people who are completely sympathetic to her cause and would never reveal such statements, then she's perfectly safe. If, on the other hand, she makes these opinions known to people who may not be entirely sympathetic or understanding to her cause, the consequences are hers to deal with. Personally, I think that if she wants to operate on the national stage, she should take a little time out of the spotlight, perhaps on a mountaintop or in a cave, to consider her attitudes and beliefs. Saying, "I is what I is," at this point is just throwing fuel on the fire.
Well, that's what Pig and Sheep think. What are your thoughts? Email them to ovcomments@newsundies.com. For a nominal fee, you can have a website set up for you or your departed loved one, which offers long-term availability and a weather-resistant QR code label to put on the headstone so your smartphone-having mourners can check out your site and see what you were like, and just maybe what you thought of them. An outfit called Digital Legacies offers just such a service for $100 a year, or a lifetime membership for, brace yourself, $150. I would read those terms of service very carefully if I were you. $150 may seem like a lot of money, but compared to domain registration and hosting fees, that kind of money won't get you very far. All this is to say nothing of the creepy, weirdy factor in all this. Ugh. Well, stay tuned. Still to come, still among us. That's a big cup. And why won't you die?
It can be hard to think rationally when a loved one passes away. This can be especially true in the event of untimely death or when religious or cultural traditions demand quick interment of remains. Blue and Flatley Funeral Homes are here to ensure your needs are served in the most efficient and profitable way possible. At Blue and Flatley Funeral Homes, your money is very important to us, and we want to make sure we do everything you can afford to put your mind at ease. Blue and Flatley, profiting from the misery of others since 1883.
Chris Brown. And now here's Moose Weintraub with a Sports Half Minute.
Weintraub Sports Half Minute. It's a whole half minute of sports. 30 seconds of sports. Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
This is your Sports Half Minute. I'm Moose Weintraub. Now that it's almost July, hockey can go back to its cave and hibernate.
Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
Thanks, Moose. Always a great report from Moose. Pat Robertson made a claim of godly threats following the Supreme Court's recent ruling on the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. Important fact, the only story about Pat Robertson worth reporting would be, quote, Pat Robertson has been silenced by God, who reports, really, I was just tired of his bullshit, end quote. That's right, I don't even want to know if he died of natural causes, or even if he was murdered. I just don't care. His silence and the silence about him would be sufficient. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? After 30 years of bachelor life, George Lucas has tied the knot again. Actually, I didn't see it coming, but in retrospect, his fleet is lost, and his friends on the Endor Moon will not survive. Still, she's got a lot of spirit. I don't know, what do you think? A girl like her and a guy like him? No? Well, anyway, congratulations, George. Just remember, your target is a small thermal exhaust port just below the main port. The target is ray-shielded, so you'll have to use photon torpedoes. Well, that's all for this edition of NewsUndies. If you see news that shouldn't be news, you can submit your story tips online at NewsUndies.com. NewsUndies is normally a weekly show, but we'll be taking a week off for the holiday, and we'll be back on Friday, July 12th with fresh undies. If you like this video, please like this video. If you have a comment on this video, feel free to comment on this video. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, ignore us on MySpace, tell your friends, and buy NewsUndies Kitsch. Thanks for watching. Until next time, for all of us here at NewsUndies, I'm Paul Torville. After that, I might be tearfully telling Matt Lauer I is what I is.